Hello, good people. How are you on this lovely Thursday? I hope that you are doing extraordinarily well. I am super excited because there have been a lot of things kind of bubbling and going on for the last several months, including the TEDx that I gave in Peterborough, which we're all still waiting for it to come out. And I'm getting ready for a major summer and fall full of transformational events. It's like I've been storing up energy this spring and I'm ready to spring it on you. And guess what? Over the last couple of days, I've been talking to some different entrepreneurs in different countries. So we have this beautiful Dr. Raj in North America, who is a medical doctor like me, but she has multiple interests. And it's like, what do you do when you have all these different passions and interests and you don't feel like you want to be locked in that box anymore? And in her case, she's like, hey, Andrea, how did you do it? How did you break out of just being a doctor and now doing all these other things? And then I was on with this beautiful Danish woman named Maken, who is running, along with this lovely other Danish woman, Meta, this entrepreneurial female go-getters group. And we went live in this private group to talk about entrepreneurship and what happens when you really want to be an authentic personal brand. And of course, one of the questions that came up was, what do you do when you have so many different passions? Because most people will say that you need to choose one, focus on one niche, focus on one thing that you deliver. And so people are always asking me, okay, how did you do it? Like, you are the quintessential multi-passionate, some would have said ADD, but you won't say that now because you're too nice to me. But some would have said the ADD entrepreneur that is Wandrea, as I'm known. But it's been a process of coming out of my own box of conformity over the last several years. I've shared about it in my book, I Love You Me. I shared about it in my very first TED Talk. And it's the subject of this year's TEDx. And I have a special guest who is celebrating a special day. And we have all sorts of special projects together. So it's like this perfect opportunity.
Can't hear you.
Perfect opportunity for me to introduce you to this person. So you'll hear me introducing my friend Bruce Cryer in just a moment. But first I want to give a shout out to some people. Hello, Ninette. It's lovely to see you in the house. And Ninette, I'm going to be seeing you in Denmark. Like I said, this is going to be an extraordinary summer. I'm first coming to Denmark next month for our Light Festival for summer solstice, which is something I'm super excited about because we're reclaiming our what do I want to say? We're reclaiming this previous tradition of looking at the Light Festival or the Summer Solstice Festival that happens in some Scandinavian countries where they don't anymore, obviously. They used to burn witches, or they would erect, like at Burning Man, a wooden witch and burn it. But we wanted to reclaim this festival of light, especially for those of us who consider ourselves light workers, and say, you know what? Let's make this a positive thing where we can embrace the fact that we have these magical gifts, that we are intuitives and clairsentients and multi-passionate Renaissance people. So I'm very excited to see you there, Ninette, and so many other amazing people. So there's so much to talk about, and this is Thursday. This is not a time that I usually go live, but as I said, it's been a special set of circumstances. I just got back from a venue tour for an upcoming event, and it is something that's very special, very unique, and there's limited space for it. So anyway, I'll tell you more about it. But first, without further ado, so I was introduced by one of our beautiful authors in Life After Trauma and Magic and Miracles. One of our beautiful authors named Paul Luftenegger from Canada. He and I met 3 years ago. We've traveled to India and traveled to New York for these various spiritual retreats. And he's really a soul brother to me. He's a beautiful singer-songwriter, and I know many of you got to hear him live in Spain with us last month. Well, he told me, Andrea, you've absolutely got to connect with this new friend of his named Bruce. And as he was telling me about his background, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. We totally need to connect. So Bruce Cryer is one of the original founding members of the Institute of Heart Math and served as their CEO for well over a decade or two, I don't remember. But the interesting thing about Bruce is he left Heart Math after some interesting twists and turns in his health. And he's celebrating 8 years now out from surgery. And what's exciting about Bruce's story is not only is he recovered and well, and he'll tell you all of that, but he has returned to his love for performance art, singing, dancing, photography. And we are teaming up on some projects that I am so excited to tell you about. So now that I've built it up so incredibly much, I'm happy to introduce you to Bruce Cryer. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you, Andrea. It was a lovely moment there about a minute and a half ago when you went completely silent. I thought, this is interesting. I can't hear anything, can't read lips. I'm sure the sound will come back and we'll be fine. But anyway, regardless of that, thank you for the lovely intro. It's so wonderful to be working with you and connected to you. And thank you, Paul Luftenegger, forever for the connection. What a lovely soul he is.
Yes, indeed he is. A very precious, precious soul who has become so just important in my life. So, gosh, where do we begin? I don't know. Let's dive into the drama. Come on, as fellow thespians as we are, fellow theater junkies. No, really, seriously though, because I saw this post that you shared on Facebook. So why don't you just take us from there, and then we can get into your amazing background, and maybe we'll even sing. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Well, I woke up this morning and looked at the date, and May 23rd, I thought, why is that date familiar? Oh, 8 years ago today, I was waking up from surgery to replace my left hip. And I thought, that actually is Throwback Thursday. Why don't I acknowledge that's really what happened 8 years ago? And especially not just that I had surgery, but how the recovery has unfolded at a level that I just could not have imagined. When I went into that surgery, and then, as you know, 3 months later, I had the other hip replaced as well, which was the plan to do both, but not at the same time. My aspiration was to be able to walk and hike without pain. I somehow did not imagine I would ever dance again. And because I was a dancer when I was young, I actually got my degree in performing arts in dance. I love dance. It's one of the most freeing forms of expression for me personally. Give me a beat or not. Give me a melody or not. I can dance to it, and we'll probably have a great time.
We've seen you freestyling on Facebook.
You have. I bet you have. So, but I didn't think that was an option. I was just get out of pain and have a good life, but not that. And when a friend of mine suggested that I try this form of dance called Five Rhythms, which is an improv style, and this was 5 months after both surgeries, and he was telling me 2 hours of nonstop improv dance, and I said, okay, dude, which part of double hip replacement did you miss? Because 2 hours of nonstop dance, you got to be kidding me. There's no way I'm in shape for that. Anyway, foolish me. I tried it. I loved it. I was exhausted. Decided to try it again the next week. Loved it. Was exhausted. And I thought, actually, this is really good. And I think this is an important part of my rehabbing, in fact. And it turned out to be just the chance to express myself again was a huge part of my healing, and remains that way today. And so that was actually, ironically, the tail end of the journey, and the drama, that was kind of the fun, upbeat part, because there were so many surprises, like the fact I could actually dance, so my hips not only could support me, I had much stronger hips than I used to have, because now they're titanium and all kinds of good stuff in there. So those guys are indestructible. So it's been quite a journey. But before that, as you know, I was diagnosed with cancer, and surgery was the protocol based on that. It was a fairly large tumor, but they were hopeful it was slow growing, and I'm coming up on 10 years cancer free. So notice I skipped to the end of the happy ending. So 10 years cancer free, but along the way it got dramatic because I had to have some treatments, immunotherapy treatments, to make sure the tumor didn't come back. And the treatment started giving me staph infections, and the staph got into my blood. And when I was hospitalized, because that's a life-threatening condition, just before they released me, they told me it was actually MRSA, which, as you know, as a doctor, is the particularly difficult version to treat. So I thought, apparently my soul said, we're going to give you a series of dramatic things and then just have some little cherry on top. Like how I learned it was MRSA was I was going to get discharged within a couple hours, and my regular nurse comes in a hazmat outfit. Now you don't really want to see that when you're lying in bed thinking you're about to be discharged from the hospital. I'm thinking, what is going on?
Oh my God.
And she explains to me that it was this very difficult form of staph called MRSA. And I wasn't in mortal danger, nor was she, but they were taking extra precautions because highly infectious and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I survived that, and I'm coming up on nine years staph infection free. So all that got out of the way. So those were the highlights and the lowlights. But yeah, it's been quite a journey since then, because when I realized I was not only going to get my strength back, and I wasn't in an inevitable decline and demise towards mortality, the hope started to come back, and realizing, wow, I could be okay again after all. I could actually dance. I could do creative things again, and that energy was coming back, and that was, of course, very inspirational to help me heal even faster. And as you know, singing came around the same time as the dancing, really, and that was kind of an epiphany, like, wow, I can really sing again, and it sounds pretty good. So just one thing after another.
So, I mean, just to put this into context, if you're just joining me, I'm joined by Bruce Cryer. He's the founder of the Renaissance Human Project. And so Bruce is talking about how, 8 years ago, double hip replacement, after having surgery and immunotherapy for cancer, gets this staph infection, this MRSA, or MRSA, as the Brits would call it. So yeah, you're faced with like back-to-back diagnoses and challenges that would make most of us think, oh my God, could this be the end? And what we didn't say at the beginning of our time together was, like, you had actually had a pretty beautiful run in the corporate world. We're going to get to the singing in a minute, don't worry. But you had been working for one of our favorite companies here at Andrea Pennington Global, and that is the Institute for Heart Math. So you had already been in this space of healing modalities, at the deepest of levels, and you were having a pretty good life. And then all of a sudden, to have all of these things stacked on you, to be fairly young, and to feel like, wait a minute, I might be checking out, that's pretty dramatic.
Yes, and there was one more piece to the story, which I don't know if I mentioned to you previously, but just a couple months prior to the decision to have the hip surgeries done, my mother passed away. And it had been a long decline with Alzheimer's, and we kind of actually were amazed that she stayed living as long as she did, because she was cognitively gone for several years before she finally passed. But it was my mom. She was 94, but it was my mom, and so in the middle of all of that, it was definitely challenging on all kinds of levels. But there were many points in this journey where I realized that as hard as it was, as each step of it was, and it was that when the hips started to really get problematic, which was happening when I was being treated for the staph in my blood, that's when I got the most freaked out of all, because I could not walk downstairs and feel stable anymore. I felt like an 85-year-old man. Now, I've been a mountain goat hiker for my whole life. I'm a dancer with really strong quads. And to have this happen, it's like, oh man, this is not okay. This is not the life on any level that I want to have. Obviously, all that changed, but there were some very dark times and dark moments. However, credit where credit is due, I maintained the spiritual practice all through this, which was revolved especially around the heart. And thanks to all the work I'd done learning the heart math techniques and then having the opportunity to teach tens of thousands of people literally on 4 continents and literally thousands of presentations. There were different points in this journey where I'd come out of the hospital after a procedure or surgery, whatever it was, and someone, often a friend, and sometimes it was a doctor or a nurse, would say, "Wow, you're looking so much better than I was expecting." And
gee, thanks.
Which is one of those, I think that's a compliment, but how bad did you think I was going to look? But I kept hearing comments, like not just that one, but wow, you're doing awesome. Yeah, you really got to rest. You're doing great, but you really got to rest. But I kept hearing that, and doctors kept being like, wow, you're recovering so quick from this hip surgery. I wish all my patients responded so well as you have. So I kept hearing that, and I realized, thank God for all of the work I had done in myself to try to manage stress, manage anxiety throughout my life, let alone during this 2 years when all that was happening. And it was a credit to the power of the heart and the power of our own ability to heal. Yeah. That even though my body was undergoing a lot of stuff, kind of in sequence there, in parallel, there was a spirit that hadn't died, and there was a creative juice that was coming alive, actually, that was helping a lot. So.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that, because I've been talking with one of my clients who wrote a beautiful manifesto called "Creativity is Power," and I actually am considering doing a new TED Talk on creativity as a superpower. But what you describe about feeling these things coming back, like the urge to sing and the ability to sing. So we gave sort of, okay, there's the 2 years of drama. You had many, many years in the corporate world doing really meaningful work at the Institute of Heart Math. But before that, you were doing a whole lot of performing as an actor, as a singer. So take me back to how that started, and what was it like to have a 20-plus year pause? Because for me, I did not do well when I like you, I was performing since high school and loving it. It's what I believe has saved my life. But when I went and became a medical doctor, and for the first few years could only really focus on getting through med school without failing. But later I realized it was music that saved me. And eventually I was able to bring media and music and creativity together where I am today. But for you, how did you, was it okay? I mean, granted, the work you were doing at Heart Math was incredibly creative and innovative. But did you suffer at all going from performing in one of the longest running performances, the Fantastics, which you have to tell us about that. Did you suffer at all?
Yeah, but I didn't know. I didn't know I was. So yeah, I had this lovely 5 years really of professional activity in musical theater in Broadway in New York, and but I kind of fell into it. I wasn't a theater kid. I wasn't even a singer until senior year in high school. So I kind of liked theater, but I never ever imagined myself doing it. It was like the farthest thing from my mind, and fell into it. And within 2 years of this high school play that I was asked to play the lead, within 2 years and 2 months of that, I was starring in the longest running musical in the world, which is this wonderful show called The Fantastics. And when I got there, and I was now living in the city as still a sophomore in college, between semesters at the Oberlin Conservatory, and for 2 months I had the lead role, and then I went back to college. And like, did that really happen? Was I drugged? I literally ended the show on a Sunday night in tears. I couldn't believe it. I was so sad to believing. The next afternoon, I was back in Ohio, a junior in college. I thought, wow, did that really happen? So there was this sort of whirlwind thing that occurred. And then when I went back into professional life, when I finished college and did a bunch of shows, went back into the Fantastics, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. But the other parts of me that had been developing prior to getting into singing and acting and dancing, which was very much about social consciousness and spiritual development and humanity and civil rights and the environment, all those things that were what had been my bigger interest, way more than performing, which was a non-interest, they started to come back. And I thought, this other part of me is not dead. In fact, it's feeling more important than the other, than just being on stage. Not dissing being on stage. I love it and love having a chance to do it again. But for me, it felt like there was a deeper part of me to explore and things to learn in life. Yeah. So I kind of left willingly, and so when I left, it was like the lights were turned off, and it was kind of amazing to me that I didn't miss it. Yeah. I'd have dreams of being called in and getting on a cab and then having to walk on stage to cover somebody's role in the Fantastic. Yeah. That happened quite a while, for not every night, but every now and then I'd kind of wake up, I haven't done the show in 5 years. Will I remember all the lines? But that was just sort of fun. But eventually, by the time HeartMath rolled around, one of the things we discovered, this was like 1991, 6 of the original founding members of the group had all had professional careers in music, either playing in rock bands, recording, or being on Broadway. So we had a core of like, well, why would we not have a band? I mean, we got some serious talent here. Yeah. So we did. We created a band. Then we brought in 3 or 4 more people, all of whom worked at HeartMath, and we would perform on weekends when workshop gang would come. And HeartMath got almost every weekend we'd have a workshop all through the 90s. So almost every weekend we'd do a short set, maybe 2 or 3 on the weekend, but that kind of satisfied a lot of that. Yeah. That urge to perform, and likewise, and meanwhile I was teaching a lot. And for me, I say the word teaching. It feels more like facilitating. It feels more like having a fun, lighthearted, and deep conversation with a bunch of friends that I get to know in the course of a day or a weekend. So that was satisfying a certain desire to interact with others in a not exactly performing, but similar kind of way. But then the band didn't happen. The band finally dispersed after about 7 or 8 years of that, which was a big loss to not have that anymore. And then I found in my role in the work at HeartMath, I was kind of moving upstairs in the organization, vice president of global strategy, and then president and CEO. And with each new position, there were other people that were doing more of the creative things that I had been doing previously, like managing marketing and graphics. And I think the first 2 or 3 versions of the HeartMath website I designed. That was back in the 90s. So, but they had better people now to do that than me. So that meant also I didn't have those creative outlets. So I was kind of noticing that even though I still got a lot of fulfillment out of working with clients in a group or one-on-one, that wasn't the same as the creative, as the more explicitly artistic and creative things. And when I was in the last year or 2, when I was still CEO of HeartMath, a friend of mine actually came to me at one point. She knew I was going to have the hip surgeries done, so it was kind of in the thick of all the health stuff. And she said to me, she heard about my background. She said, "So why aren't you singing, Mister?" And I thought, don't have a good answer for that. It hadn't been singing at that point. I hadn't been singing really at all. Yeah. For 10 years. Wow. At least. Yeah. And before that, I was intermittent with the band, but the band had waned a little bit even before it ended. And then she said, "Why aren't you dancing?" And I said, "Well, I have bad hips." But then she said, "But you're getting them fixed." Yeah. So it was kind of like throwing down the gauntlet, like. Yeah.
Don't you love how people can do that for us? and if you are, intellectually and personally honest, when someone throws down that gauntlet, you do have to answer that question. Wait, why am I not? And you and I have such similar backgrounds. I can totally relate. One of our comments here from Shelley Thomas, who's also in one of our upcoming books, you'll meet her. She says that even niching herself feels painfully disingenuous and incomplete at times. She says she's always trying to find ways to synthesize her background as a lawyer with her passion for functional medicine, medical cannabis, and developmental disabilities. So when you talked about, Bruce, like there were parts of you that were being fulfilled. So with the band, you could be fulfilled. You loved all this social change and creativity and heart and psychology stuff. So being at HeartMath felt really fulfilling, especially in the early years when you were in more of a creative role. And that's exactly kind of what I went through at Discovery Channel. So when I was hired as the medical director, fresh out of my medical residency training, it was like, oh, this is cool. I'm back in the creative zone. I'm working with TV and documentaries and working on the website. But it was over time that for me, what was missing was this deeper spiritual and energetic stuff that I wasn't able to bring to the broadcast world at the time. Things have changed, thank heavens. But I got to a point where it did not feel right. And I have to shout out to my friend Nidal Alice. He was my COO at the time. And like the woman that saw you, Nidal came to me and was like, how much you been singing? You singing lately? And I'm like, what do you care? He's like, well, I just noticed that when you sing, you're in a better mood. Yeah. Things go a little smoother. And so he like took control and was like, look, we're going to block out time in your schedule where you can do creative stuff. And so, once again, it's like being able to emote and to go deep and to share spiritually with my clients. I needed all of it in order to feel whole and feel complete, which brings me to what I shared in my TED. You haven't seen it yet. I should just send you the link so you could get a sneak peek.
Love it. Sure.
But in this TEDx that I delivered last month, I use the stage now to challenge myself, because I'm always challenging my clients. They'll tell you that I'm pushing them out of their comfort zone. And so this year I really wanted to kind of challenge myself by sharing even more authentically and to sing. And in this particular TED Talk, I talk about how I went through a period of years where I suppressed my creativity, or I hid it and only did it as sort of an afterthought, because I was told that it wasn't as important as, the hard studies of science and technology, but it was much to my detriment. And so in this talk, I share that for me personally, when I finally admitted that, I can try to hide all of my passions because people want to say I'm a dilettante, or what have you got, ADD, or, we can't figure you out. Are you a doctor, an acupuncturist, an actor, a singer? We can't figure you out. Well, instead of me trying to please other people, I just needed to embrace that this is who I am. I am a multi-passionate, multi-potential Renaissance human, and which is something that has bound you and me together. You also got to this point where it was like, wait, this is not just a fun hobby. Like, you did a crowdfunding thing. You created a whole new album of original songs and then performed them in New York for your big release. So tell me about how this return to singing has led you to the Renaissance Human Project.
Yeah. Well, it's been such a delight and such a revelation, actually, to see the importance of things that we love to do artistically, creatively. Even if, for me, I'm not making a living off singing. There are a couple of times in the last 5 or 6 years I've made good money for an event I've been asked to do, but I'm not needing to do that or trying to do that. And I make that distinction only because, for me, it's the joy of being able to sing. At all. And now that I'm especially back in New York, there's so many opportunities. And I think I may have mentioned to you, I think I've now performed in the city about 20 times since I moved back here, which was less than 18 months ago.
Wow.
And I hadn't been performing in the city previously for 40 years. So there was a long gap. So, I performed 2 nights ago and a week before that. And I don't get paid for any of them. But I'm in a creative mode. I'm needing to rehearse. I'm needing to keep an instrument, my voice, alive and fresh and improving. I'm trying to get better, not just kind of hold my own. And there's something about having that energy going that is enough. It doesn't have to be my main source of income. And that's been an insight for me but I need to have something going. I mean, I need to have a reason to rehearse or just keep rehearsing, knowing that there will be another opportunity because they keep on coming. So to me, I realized when I am practicing a skill that I love, like singing or dancing, and I don't really practice photography in a sense, and yet when I'm doing that too and remembering, like, hey, wait a minute, get up, see what is the sun looking like this morning? Whoa, okay, thank you. Been making those opportunities, that feeding that part of me, even if it's never going to turn into anything commercially viable, is fine, because it's feeding that spirit, and I have to do some discipline around it. And I realized a while back that I want to consistently get up very early in the morning and make sure I'm journaling first thing in the morning and meditating first thing in the morning and exercising. And I've actually started scheduling in time to sing every day too on my calendar. And I'm just warming up. I'm vocalizing. I'm doing exercises. I'm practicing songs there's this one event that I do fairly regularly, and there's a set of 8 or 9 songs that I do. So I'll practice different ones just to keep the instrument alive. And I figured that the neighbors probably don't mind too much. It's during the day. Most people are gone.
Yeah.
So why not? But to me, that's been a big insight to that. The regularity of it is an important piece. But you asked a bigger question. So I got back to singing in 2012 and started this project. It started out just not as a project, just as me and an old friend getting together because I'd had this epiphany singing Christmas carols at the Kennedy Center that I needed to sing, and that I needed to use my singing voice in a public way somehow, which was quite a surprise to get that message in the Kennedy Center singing Christmas carols, but it came loud and clear. I reached out to this amazing musician, former college roommate of mine, the amazing Gary Malkin, and a month later we were hanging out for a weekend and singing, and he's the guy who introduced me to the Five Rhythms dance. Now, I'll never forget when Gary and I sat at the piano for the first time, and he turned to me and he said, "So what are you singing?" Which would be a normal thing a pianist would say to the singer. What kinds of stuff are you doing these days? I said, well, I sing with Adele and Sarah Bareilles in the car, and I feel that they really need a mature male voice to complete them. I mean, they're amazing on their own, of course, but there's just something about the two of us, or three of us. There's magic. This is basically what I said to Gary. And he's kind of rolling his eyes, saying, "No, seriously, what are you doing? What are you singing now?" I said, "No, seriously, dude, that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm here. I think I can expand beyond just singing along while I'm driving." So a journey began with Gary, because he's such an exceptional performer and just a genius musically since age 5, that a partnership developed, and within about 4 months, I'd been hired by Kaiser to do a keynote. I was known within Kaiser, and HeartMath did a lot of work with Kaiser, and so in a few months I was going to be addressing 500 of their healthcare professionals for 2 hours. And Gary and I are preparing this. We're realizing we have a really interesting dynamic together. We're both talented. He's very loud and very large and funny, and we're just like an odd couple in terms of our chemistry on stage. And that works because we've known each other so long. We have a deep respect and love for each other. We thought, we could like do a thing. We could do like a keynote performance. That's what we called it. And of course, we discovered lots of people call their thing that. But keynote performance, that's us. And we called it "What Makes Your Heart Sing." And I talked to Kaiser and said, "Hey, I know I'm booked to do this thing in a couple months, and you want me to talk about having been a patient and kind of my journey as a patient. What if I do that and also have some live music involving an Emmy Award-winning composer, and we'll get the audience singing and maybe dancing? I'll still cover all the substance you want me to cover, and I'll weave that into my story of healing and recovery and all that." And they said, "Yes." And Gary Malkin, really? They knew who he was. "And you were roommates in college? You got to be kidding us." Okay, so they bought the whole idea, and we did a series of events for them over several years that became kind of our calling card, and we call it "What Makes Your Heart Sing." And that became the journey, and it started the journey for me to really embracing the singing again, and also not just singing, but part of what I enjoyed in creating these events, usually 1 to 2 hour long events, was the curation of and the arc, thinking of it as a theatrical event, not just a talk that had some songs, but wanting to take the audience on a journey with me and with Gary. And that became really a fun challenge of, well, what would best illustrate that? Oh, what if I tell the story about my father, who had this deep, deep reverence for classical music, and he'd be sitting there in his chair, kind of like mine, and on a Sunday, and he'd listen to a Verdi opera or a Mahler symphony. He'd just be kind of conducting and imagining himself singing or conducting, and sometimes there would be tears streaming down his face. And we thought, yeah, let's tell that and actually play the Mahler symphony while we're telling it. So we would kind of create this theatrical elements that also were delivering content that was relevant to the people. So that was bringing back a lot of the juice for the creative process, how to fill it with music, how to fill it with dramatic elements. And it was like, oh, I have to rehearse now. It's so much more fun sounding than let's have a meeting.
Exactly.
So that's a little bit of the journey. And then the album was a whole nother completely unexpected phase that caught me off guard and delighted me.
Well, I'm sure it did delight you, because to be able to get to a point in our lives where we can do something with the excellence of a professional, even if you weren't doing it as a job or something where you're dependent on it for the income, you're still doing it not as some little side thing, hobby. You're doing it with this sense of, I really want to create an experience for people. Yes. Through the music, through the live performances, whether that's at a church or a music hall, it doesn't matter. And I think that's what this idea that really struck me about your project, because what I've noticed now doing branding for healers and coaches and empaths and light workers is that the particular niche that I seem to attract are people who have been, like me, somewhat marginalized because they had superpowers or because people thought they were weird. And I mean more on the side of, maybe you were a healer, maybe you hear voices and you're not schizophrenic, maybe you are able to see energy, or you have the ability to lay hands on people and they feel it and they heal. And so many of the people that I've been meeting over the years, they're all kind of saying, yeah, that's been me, and I've been hiding. Or after the first TED Talk, people were saying, oh my God, yeah, I went into engineering or IT, or I also became a doctor, but I'm really a performer. How do I do what you did, Andrea? How do I break out? And the answer for me was, eventually, it didn't happen the moment I decided, but over the years I've been able to put everything together, to put all of my passions together. The spirituality and the woo-woo, the creativity, the cheerleading and coaching and lifting other people up, the media, of course, and being a medical doctor and a therapist. And now I get to put it all together, and it makes me feel whole. Now, as I shared, the only thing that was missing was the singing thing. And so just like that woman that laid down the gauntlet, and my dear friend, happy birthday, Nadal, and his twin, Iyad, happy birthday. But just like when Nadal was like, okay, you need to be singing more. Over the last 2 years, this is the message that I had been getting. But like you're saying, you don't feel like the need to do it and go back to Broadway. It's just like you're doing what lights you up, and it happens to flow with the material that you're sharing, whether that's heart math material or it's about embracing the fact that, hey, you've got a life, live it. And if you have these multiple passions, that's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah, beautifully said. And not only is it not a bad thing, it's who you are, and it's to be embraced and loved. And the question, I think that you made a beautiful point about how in your journey you have had so many interests. And in my sense of you too, is that not only were they interests, they were things you became really good at. You have multiple highly developed talents, not just interests. So that's even more tempting to want to do them all, because you're good at quite a few things. And people acknowledge that, and you can have a career of doing multiple things. But I think it's finding into the question that the person who's on the call was asking about, how do you integrate all those things? I think that is the challenge, and to me it's a matter of following your heart and trying to see. Like I said, as long as I'm singing something, and if I have some idea that I'm going to sing again publicly in the next month or two, I'm good as far as the singing.
Yeah.
As long as I'm dancing in my living room with music on, that's fine. I don't have to do it somewhere else. If I can do it somewhere else, cool, but I don't have to do that. But as long as I'm making the time to dance for a few minutes, I might post it on Facebook or not. I'm good.
Yeah.
But it's the integration of it, and to recognize these are important parts of the energy that keeps me going in whatever challenges I'm having, what the business challenge, the trying to launch a new product. I'm going to be launching a new program, as well as a product that you and I mean, you're helping me do the book. And so there's certain challenges that come up, and one is, how's this going to work, blah, blah, blah. To me, if these other elements of your life that make you who you are being active, the whole thing, it's just like grease on the wheel or something. It just makes everything go smoother, with less friction, with less frustration.
Exactly.
And like today, like I said, I woke up and was feeling pretty good. And May 23rd. Oh yeah. Oh wow.
8 years ago.
This is a big day.
This is a big day. Well, one of the things that I'm really excited to share with our audience is the fact that you are coming here to Europe for an event that we are putting on. It's the Global Luminary Activation Experience. Sounds mystical, right? But really, this is an event designed to help people who are looking at using their gifts and talents as a part of their business or part of their destiny, and they want to get it out there in a bigger way. And one of the things that I'm excited about that you're coming, you'll be presenting and singing, but we have a transformational team of teachers. So you'll meet this lovely woman named Ofkia Tikens from Holland, who has, just like you were saying about this, putting all of your talents, even if you just know it's a month away, you're good. Ofkia teaches about the archetypes and the talents that are hidden within us. And when we combine them and use them and give them roles to play, almost like in a play, then we do feel that sense of self-acceptance and ease rather than the frustration of being suppressed. And one of our other presenters is this lovely woman from Sweden, Malin Hedlund, who talks about what you're talking about, this idea that even if we're not doing it competitively or as a performance, like your interpretive dance, as I might call it, that you shared, she really believes in movement. Malin is always saying you've got to move your body, whether it's yoga or it's running or it's dancing, because when we do that, there's something that happens in our activation of embodying the fact that we are beings that have multiple interests, multiple energy forces. If you stay only in your head or only in one domain, you're going to feel off balance. You're not going to feel integrated and whole. Right? So we're inviting people to the south of France for this Global Luminary Activation Experience so that they can experience 5 days in a resort with transformational leaders like yourself and me and several others who can teach both of these aspects, the aspect of what does it take to really be a whole healthy vessel to bring forth the gifts, to do what makes your heart sing, but doing it in service to others. So if you have a gift of healing or coaching or speaking, you yourself are in a good state. But then there's also the professional development. So the way that we've put this together is it's a 5-day mastermind, and then it's a 1-year continuity program where you get to be mentored by me and my transformational team. So we're only limiting it to 50 people who get to come and have this experience. But I'm really grateful that you're coming, and I'm grateful because it ties together what you're doing with the Renaissance Human Project. You also have 2 book things going on. One is participating in our book, The Top 10 Traits of Highly Resilient People. But also, you're inviting other authors or potential authors to share their own experience of what it means to embrace all of these talents, whether it's professionally or just for your own sanity. Tell me about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, this term Renaissance Human that you've mentioned occurred to me at a certain point because several years ago when I was really getting out there more in terms of the singing and dancing and photography even, I started hearing these comments from business people who had no idea that I had that side to me, saying, wow, you're like a Renaissance man. And I heard it enough times that I thought, people are perceiving me as a Renaissance man. Perhaps I am. And then I thought, wow, this is the first time in my life that anybody's ever called me that, because it's the first time in my life all those facets of myself, I'm doing them all roughly at the same time. There's some degree of integration already. And I've been thinking about writing a book. I've written a few others already previously, and thinking about sort of my life story. And I thought, well, the journey is that I have had a rebirth, no question about it. In fact, several times, not just after the health issues. And by the Renaissance man, there's certain problems with the terminology. Number one, it misses half the world's population, and it also feels a bit old.
Yeah.
And then I thought, Renaissance human, that sounds so different. It sounds future-oriented,
yes,
but still with this reverence for beauty, which the Renaissance implies. And I started playing with all that and developed a model around it. And to your point about movement, to me in my journey, both in terms of recovery, but also just kind of coming into the fullness of my creative expression, movement's been a huge part of it. In developing a model that I'm now teaching at places like Stanford around kind of developing your own creativity, movement is catalyst number 2. And part of how I describe this to people is that most of us spend our lives in this shape. That's it. And so what does that look like from an energy flow standpoint? Several stuck potential spots. So what if our life was more fluid? And so one of the things that I love to do, and we'll probably do this in the retreat in France, is to lead people through a deep meditation, a mindfulness practice, and really getting in touch with what the body is trying to tell them, but in a deep, peaceful, emotionally recharging way, and then to actually take them into some movement. And people at first like, I don't want to move, I just like feeling in here. And I say, trust me, you are going to like this, you're going to really like this. And I kind of gradually guide them into, while they're still sitting, just kind of use your hands a little bit. And of course there's music that would motivate one to want to move. And before long they're up and moving and like, okay, I'm kind of liking this. But for me in my journey, I've realized that in terms of keeping the creative energy going and flowing, moving is essential. It's just way too easy to be stuck in a chair, stuck on our device, whatever it is, and not realizing that, well, the energy is stuck.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's up here that it's stuck. Yeah. So we've got to just move sometimes is all that's needed to free up something enough where a channel can open up and you can get a new idea or a new track. Absolutely.
And that's something I learned so early on in my medical career. It was weird at first because I had 2 hats on. I had the regular MD, American trained doctor, surgeon, and then wearing the hat of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. But exactly what you're describing about stuck energy, I started to see. I started to see my patients and I'm like, I can tell why you're all blocked up. I can tell why you've got insomnia or you've got this muscle tension, because that energy has got to flow. So whether you move it through dance or through painting or through writing or singing or you do yoga or qigong or surfing, it matters not, but you've got to start to move the energy. And certainly physically it makes more sense because you don't want to be stiff and walking around hunched over. You want to be able to dance through life, right?
Absolutely, and there's so much power in being able to move, and especially moving in a place. If you have any kind of access to nature, I live near the city, as you know, and there's a lot of city around, a lot of big buildings. But I find ways to get nature. I get out to whatever nature there is. I'm going to be near it and take my shoes off and walk on the earth when everybody else is in shoes because it's concrete every other place. So little things like that can do so much to trigger the creative juice.
But did you always know that? Like, did you always have this sense of knowing, like, oh my gosh, I need my nature fix, right? Like, we have many people who will be at the Global Luminary, or we call it GLAY. I've put the link for those who want to be notified when tickets go on sale. But we have a variety of yogis and other people who are teaching about the 4 elements and the benefit of grounding, putting your feet in the grass, or, I'm pointing over here to the sea, in the sand or in the sea. Did you always know that, even as a young person, or?
It definitely grew a lot in the last 10 years. there was always an awareness. I mean, the decision to leave the acting profession and move specifically to Northern California was partly for the spectacular nature of Northern California. I ended up settling in a town which is the home of an old growth redwood forest, and it's 30 minutes from the Pacific Ocean. And I was very conscious that this was a decision for my soul, my spirit, to live amongst fantastic big nature, pretty unsullied nature too, and lived there for many years. And so it had been an awareness of mine, but life can still happen. And there was a period before I got back into before I learned about heart math and was helping to create it all, that I had lost track of that. I was in a very stressful job that was feeling overwhelming to me, and I would be driving every day to the office. 30-minute drive, a spectacular drive. Yeah. I mean, there'd be all these tourists driving very slow because it was so beautiful. Right. I'd be like, I wasn't hitting my horn, but I was in stress.
Yeah.
At some point, I woke up and thought, dude, your commute involves driving around redwood trees, and you're like seriously stressed out.
Yeah.
There's something so wrong with this picture. You got to wake up and smell the roses, or in this case, the redwood trees. And that was kind of the first awakening that you got to take advantage. You were living in an amazing area. This could be providing with so much refreshment and recharge for your system and just new perspective. That redwood tree has been around so much longer than the internet.
Exactly.
That's driving you crazy right now. So it was a huge perspective shift. So I've noticed, even though I was onto it fairly young in a sense, nevertheless, I've had to kind of dig in deeper, and of course the health journey was the biggest, because my body, I'd never experienced anything anywhere near that severe with all those things, and then the need to just be out in nature and be in the sun and be in if I could walk, walk well enough, whatever, just get outside became really important. And just loving the sun, I love you, sun. I really love you. Whatever about vitamin D, I love you. You are so good to me.
That's exactly why we're doing Gaia here in the south of France. As you know, I have so many clients and colleagues from Iceland and Denmark and Norway and Sweden. And so to have an event in September here on the French Riviera where they can just come and be like, yes, give me more sun. It's going to be a magical experience. But for those of you who don't want to wait, I'm also going to be in North America. You mentioned the redwood trees, so I have to bring it up. You've also taught at 1440 Multiversity in the Redwoods in California. I'm going back with my dear friend Karina Virginia, the Kundalini Yoga guru, and we're teaching in July 16th through the 21st through the 26th. So I'll pop in the link after we finish this broadcast. So for anyone who might like to come and experience some neuroscience along with Kundalini yoga and ancient techniques to help you really find that true self-love, that's going to be a magical experience. And we do a lot of things outdoors with these beautiful redwoods that have such a presence and such a vital energy that I always leave transformed.
Yeah, I was right back there on the property with you as you were describing all that. It's a beautiful place.
That place is so magical. And I love the thing that is different about the way I do events, and I love that 1440 is this way, is that once you're on the campus, you're taken care of. Like the meals at 1440 are all beautifully prepared and presented. And for me, with my vegan preferences, I eat well and it's delicious. And likewise, when you come to the Global Luminary Activation Experience, unlike some conferences where it's like, come and then go get your own lunch, we want everyone to feel nestled in. We have lunch and your tea breaks so that you can really be present and go deep. And then if you need time to go stick your feet in the sand or hug a tree, we've got you covered there as well. So I'm so excited that you're going to be here with us in September. Obviously, we have some other collaborations that we're working on, bringing more of the expertise that you have around teaching about this self-acceptance with being a Renaissance human and integrating all of who we are with the teaching from Heart Math into some online course offerings and your new group book and participating in our book, The Top 10 Traits of Highly Resilient People. So I'm just thrilled. I'm like so grateful And, I'm not going to put you on the spot because I invited you to this broadcast a little late, but we will be singing for those who get the great privilege to be here with us in September at the Global Luminary Activation Experience. We just have to work on which number it's going to be, one of my songs or one of yours, or both.
Or both. Yeah, I think the audience would demand more, most likely.
Yes, and beautiful Paul Luftenegger will be here to perform. We have gongs.
Okay.
We've got these beautiful gongs coming from Iceland and possibly also from Denmark. So it's going to be like a multi-activational experience on so many levels.
I can't wait. I mean, I'm so intrigued to meet the people that are going to be drawn to this. The location has no impact on me whatsoever. I'm not at all drawn to the south of France in September, so it's nothing at all there. But and the chance to work with you, of course, is I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled at how all this is unfolding.
So I have one last question, and then I'm going to let you have the rest of your Thursday. We've been talking about how it feels when you finally come back home to yourself, embracing your talents, whether that's the creative stuff or it's, in my case, even the woo-woo spiritual stuff. You've heard me use this term light worker. Obviously, it's not new to you, but within our community, we do have these people who have gotten to a point where they realize that their gifts and the talents that they have, they want to use for the light side of life. How does that sit with you as you think about the next phase of your life as a professional? You're not going into retirement. Does the word light worker resonate with you at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I made a conscious decision. I was drawn for years, as I said, since teenage years. As a teenager, my heroes were Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and I was reading Thoreau and Emerson, when I was 15. So I was raised by two parents who were pacifists during the Second World War. So there was a very strong social justice, social conscience present for me. And so I didn't think of it in those days as working the light. As I became more spiritual, yes, I've heard that term many times, and I think when I said out loud that, and now it's more than 30 years ago, that my life was dedicated to the path of the heart, that I consider myself a heart worker, I guess, or I mean, I haven't used that term, but absolutely. And I think the only thing I would say is that there's a stage where it's exciting to recognize that in yourself, like, wow, I have a real purpose here, and that's so important. There's meaning, and with any identification of a thing that we do, or I mean, when I was an actor, I was kind of proud of being an actor, and sometimes you can feel that's better or more interesting than other people's work, whatever. And so little arrogance could slide in, or pride could slide in that isn't as useful. But I think we're at a time in our planet's history where, man, we need as many light workers as we can get. We need armies of them. And to me, there's so many people that are alive now specifically for that purpose. It's no accident that so many people are awakening, and at this time, or have been awakening, and are now able to really do something with their lives that is meaningful and feels like benefits humanity. It's no accident. There's millions of souls decided this was the time. Planet Earth was going to need a lot of light workers to be able to spread the light and spread the love and be embodiments of that as best they can, without feeling like they got to be perfect, and without saying, well, that therefore I have a more important path than somebody else's path that may be more about climate change, which is a form of light working, of course, too, but isn't necessarily as spiritual as. So to me, we're especially in a time of our history of honoring each other, and that's to me some of the highest light work we can do, is the honoring of each other wherever each other is at in our own respective paths, and just try to help love and put out as much light as we can to every situation, in hopes that can shift it in some way, if it can be shifted. Yeah,
and I believe it can be shifted. Every little bit of light that we share and we reflect to one another gives people permission to do the same, and it will amplify. I do believe that sharing our light and our love, even in the small ways, makes a difference. So thank you, my friend. Where can people connect with you, your music, and the Renaissance Human Project?
Well, there's a Facebook page called Renaissance Human, and that's one way. My personal website is my name, brucecryer.com, which talks more on the consulting, training, heart math kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's also a site in development called renaissancehuman.co, not .com, renaissancehuman.co. So and I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and all the usual suspects.
All right, so just look him up, my friends. Well, and you'll see more of him. We will be doing other interviews, certainly when we get closer to the launch of our book, The Top 10 Traits of Highly Resilient People. We will be interviewing Bruce, and when we launch your book for this Renaissance Human Project, we'll see more of you. So you've been getting all sorts of wonderful comments. I know you can't see it because you're with me via Skype, but people are saying, you guys, your energy is awesome. You're giving us permission to be who we really are. So there's a great deal of love and admiration and appreciation coming your way from this tribe. So
back at you all. And in immortal words of Oscar Wilde, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
And there it is.
Love you. Thank you, dear.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's been a pleasure. So, my friends, there you have it. This is another somewhat long episode of Liberate Your Authentic Self. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope that for those of you that are interested in using your gifts and talents and growing a business as a global luminary, I hope that you'll check out our information about this experience in September. Until we meet again, my friends, please remember that you are a gift to the world. So share your presence with passion. Much love. Bye.